Well, one word came up in my spirit this week, because I'm Monday, starting today, Sunday through Saturday. I'm always listening. I'm always thinking about this service and just asking God what he wants me to do. And this week, and a lot of times when he speaks to me, he gives me a word, there's nothing I can think of to go with it until I sit and begin to meditate and pray, and then he begins to speak to me. First of all, I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 4. I want to talk to you this morning about worship. Well, that's what we've been doing, right? Yes. That's called corporate worship. But here's what the whole struggle is about, the universal struggle is about, and what it was about in the beginning. And that is that Satan, Lucifer, if you want to read Isaiah 14, verse 12, and all the verses around that, it tells you how that Lucifer, who was one of the angels, one of the, what we believe is an archangel, along with Gabriel and Michael, he tried to ascend above God because he wanted the worship. And that's why when God created Adam and put him in the garden, Adam was a worshiper. Adam had what the devil didn't have anymore. And that was the ability to worship God. Because when Satan was cast out of heaven, he was cast out of the presence of God and he became dead to God. Spiritually, he could not communicate with God anymore. But Adam could. And so what happened was Satan had to come and he had to stop Adam. He had to stop him because he had what he always wanted. And so in Matthew chapter 4, and this is when Jesus had been baptized, and he was led into the Spirit. Now the Holy Ghost had come upon him after he was baptized. And he was led in the Spirit and began to fast. He fasted 40 days, 40 nights. And the devil began to tempt him. Now watch what the devil was doing in verse 8. Again the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And saith unto him, all these things, now Satan's talking to Jesus, all these things, all of the nations and the authority and the glory of them, all these things will I give thee if thou wilt fall down and what? Worship me. See, that's what he was after all the time, was the worship. Now, many people will say, well, Jesus couldn't have done that. He couldn't have sinned in this temptation because he's God. He didn't function in this earth as God. Right. He could have fallen. He could have obeyed the devil. But he passed the test because he was the last Adam, the second Adam. He passed the test that the first Adam failed. And so we see then that it was all about worship. And guess what? It still is today. There's a great struggle going on right now. Who's going to get the worship? See, the Greek word for worship is Proskoneo. You know what that spells? I don't either. I don't think any English-speaking person could pronounce that. but it means to fall down before or bow down before. Now, worship means this to us anyway. To worship God is to give glory to him. When you give glory to him, that means he is glorified. The next thing is you worship what you love. Worship is an expression of your love to the Father. Reverence. When you worship, you are revering him. When you worship, you are adoring him. Adoration. When you worship, you are showing him respect. When you worship him, you exalt him. You lift him up. When you worship, you please him. Do you know that the Lord enjoys your worship? As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you in a minute something that you might not have ever seen before, but just let me say this right at this point. He loves your worship. Oh, he loves it so much. When you worship, you please him so much. The next thing is, to worship means to humble yourself and to submit yourself to God. To worship means that you are honoring him. To worship means that you magnify him. We'll talk about that in just a minute. What happens when you magnify something? You make it bigger. When you worship, you confess. You confess all these things: love, reverence, adoration. When you love, you show him that he is the most important thing in your life. Now, everybody's going to worship something or somebody. That's just the way it is. Everybody. Why? Because we were just created with a need in us to worship. And so here again, everybody's going to worship something. That's why there's so many religions in the world. They all are worshiping some God. The Muslims, they worship some God. Allah, which is a demon principality. The Hindus worship, well, they got 3,000 gods. They got all kind of gods. But everybody is going to worship something or somebody, and worship takes time. Worship has to do with your resources. Did you know, listen, you give to what you love. And if you love God, then you give to God. But you can't go up to heaven and hand him anything. How do you give to God down here? Well, the main thing is you give to the church. You give to the needs of other believers. Amen? You give to the poor. Now we know that the tithe belongs to God, but then there has to be a heart to give when it comes to the rest of these things. I believe, but because of just what's in my heart and what I do a lot of times, I'm a giver. Just because you give from time to time does not make you a giver. Just like if you just pray every once in a while doesn't make you a prayer. Amen. You're a giver because you give to God, you love him, that's the way you express your love to him, and that's a lifestyle. Now when you magnify him, and that has to do with what happens when you worship, you're making him bigger, you're magnifying him above yourself. You're putting him first. You are magnifying him above yourself. In other words, if you're magnifying him, you're going to be humble and you're not going to be able to walk in pride. You magnify him when you worship above your weaknesses, your hurts, your wounds, your pain, your distractions. When you worship, you are training your mind. The Bible says that I will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. And it also trains your words. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. And it creates transformation. And it's a spiritual exercise. Now, I found out a long time ago, when you just set aside maybe, I don't care if it's just 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour or extended time of worship. And don't misunderstand me. You should live a lifestyle of worship. You can worship him when you get up in the morning. You don't have to get on your knees. You don't have to lay on your face. You can worship him, and you just talk to him all day. You just worship him all day. You worship him on the job. You worship him when you're riding down the road. How many times? I know you're like me. You're just riding along. I worship you, Father. I worship you. I don't even know how many times a day I do that, but I'm sure you're doing the same thing. But see, worship is a heart thing. Isn't that right? But if I ever sit aside and I mean, when you set aside, or if you're just riding around, if you're just worshiping him, then you know what happens. If you've ever done it very much, you know what happens. Your mind jumps in there and goes somewhere else other than you're worshiping him. And I found out, see, when you begin to worship God, your focus is on him and him alone. It is a spiritual exercise. We'll talk in a little bit about worshiping in spirit and in truth. But when you are worshiping God, even when I'm walking down the road and I start worshiping God, then some kind of crazy thought will come. And then I have to stop and take authority over it. So what happens in worship, it helps you to be able to deal with things in your mind. Everybody has bad thoughts. And so, see, you know the old adage, it says that you can't stop a bird from flying over your head, but you can sure keep him from building a nest in your hair. Amen. So, yeah, thoughts are going to come. And when you're worshiping, I don't know how many times, well, all the time. Every time I start to worship, my mind will go somewhere else. You know why it does that? Because your mind wants to be in charge. Your mind is an enemy to your spirit. That unrenewed part of your mind is an enemy to your spirit. And so when you begin to worship and focus on God, your mind doesn't want to do that. Because your mind wants to be in charge. Your mind and your emotions want to tell you how you should feel. And so you have to keep coming back when it runs off somewhere. And you know how that happens. I mean, I can be worshiping and even praying. My mind will run over here and get on something. And then I'll think, well, I got to get it back over here on worship. But then I got to go back and I start thinking, how did I get that on? And so I trace it all the way back to how I got there anyway. And all that time, my worship has been interfered with. Here again, worship will help you in controlling your mind and your emotions. Now, worship is not necessarily an emotional thing. And it's not just a mind thing, also, although your mind has to be involved. Because your soul, that is your mind, will, and emotions, okay, they are the door or the hinge on the door. They'll swing both ways. Your mind will go to worship or your mind will go over here to something else. And so your mind has to be stayed on him. He said, I'll keep you in perfect peace. So the more you worship, the more peace you're going to walk in. That's right. Amen? Yes, so it trains your mind. And some people, you know, even when I found this out, if you're worshiping and you're just saying things, Father, I love you, I worship you, I adore you, I magnify you, I honor you, I glorify you, And even if your mind drifts off, keep saying the words. Even though that you may be unconscious, you're saying the words. You may not be conscious of your words, but if you'll keep saying the words, your mind will come back and line up with the words. See, a lot of times our mind runs off, and so what do? We quit worshiping. You just get frustrated. But if you keep worshiping, if you keep saying it, I love you, Lord, I worship you, I magnify you, I glorify you, and if you just keep on saying it and just worship him, then finally your mind is going to come back and line up with your words. Okay? Now what that does is create in you what we call transformation. You can change. Many people think, well, nobody ever changes. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. I've changed more in the last 5 years than I've ever changed in my life, I guess. I feel like I have anyway. Amen. When I changed and my thoughts changed, mostly toward other people. My thoughts change and my words change. Not that we've arrived by any stretch of the imagination. Amen. When we worship him, guess what? We get to know him personally. See, that's why you learn to listen to him. And you get to know him to the place that when people start telling you lies about him, you won't believe it because you know him personally. I'll just use this example. There was this woman that even her own daddy told me one time. He said, I said, I don't know how to take her sometimes. He said, I can tell you how to take her. He said, if her lips are moving, you know she's lying. Her own daddy said that. And then I remember, and this happens to every minister, I guess. This has been some years ago, that this particular lady, I'll use that term loosely. She told that I was hitting on her. And she told somebody that had left the church, and when they told her that, it got in her head. You know, you can't unhear things. And this lady that was attended the church and was out of the church right then, she actually believed, or what she said, that I had been hitting on her. So she was a friend with Terry Fowler, and who was a minister, of course, and a good friend of mine. And she went and told him, this is what this lady said about Pastor David, pastor at the time. And he said, it's not Terry. Terry said, it's not true. He said, the reason I know it's not true because I know him. See, when somebody starts telling you that God is mean and he's got a whip and he's waiting for you to mess up and he's the one that condemns you, when people start telling you those kind of things, you'll realize that it's a lie. Why? Because you fellowship with him. You spend time with him. The more you spend time with him, the more you begin to think like he thinks. The more you spend time with him and worship, the more you're going to talk like he talks. You begin to recognize his voice. Why? Because during worship, he ministers back to you. So you begin to realize how he thinks. Now, for instance, here's another illustration. Sometimes Anessa will call me, and she said, there was this decision that needed to be made, and I went ahead and made it. Now, she made it, but she's letting me know. Okay? She said, I went ahead and made this decision because I knew you. And I knew you would make the same decision. Well, she's not hiding it from me. She's letting me know. But she's right. She knows me enough and worked with me enough to know how I think about certain things and what decisions I would make in certain situations. You see what I'm saying? My wife, We've been together, 53 years. I know a little bit about her. She knows a little bit about me. Amen. So I can tell you how she's going to react to things. I can tell you what she's going to say in certain situations. I know how she believes. And the same, is with me and her. Why? Because we spent so much time together. Now, when you spend time with the Lord, when you spend time with God, please understand that you're going to begin to act like him. The next thing is when you spend time with him, you're going to be confident that he is with you all the time. All the time. He's just going to be more real to you. God's not going to be abstract. God's not going to be a person somebody tells you about. But we're talking about knowing him for himself, not just knowing the Bible, knowing him, there's author of the Bible. Not just knowing his blessing. In Romans chapter 1, it talks about those people that begin to worship the creature more than the creator. I've seen people worship God, worship animals more than God. They'll put their animals before God. That's crazy. I've seen people that put their jobs before God. They put their children before God. If you want your children to be blessed, if you really love them, if you really love your spouse, then put God first. Family is not first. You don't worship family. You worship God. He takes care of family. Amen. Amen. But when you worship, you come to this place of confidence that you know that he receives your worship. But not only does he receive your worship, you know that he hears you when you pray. He knows what your needs are. You know that he hears you. Now, in John 9:31, what has happened is that Jesus has healed a blind man. And so the people around him, the people that knew him, saw that he had been healed. And he began to tell them, this man came and healed me, and my eyes were open. And they said, well, don't you know these are sinners? And the man said, well, he said, I'll tell you this. He said, God doesn't hear sinners. But if a man be a worshiper, him God hears. Y'all didn't shout over that like you should. Yeah. God doesn't hear sinners unless it's the sinner's prayer. Hello? A salvation prayer. But he doesn't hear sinners. He knows everything. He knows what's in their heart. He knows what they're saying. But he doesn't hear their prayer. Amen. Because if he try to worship him, he doesn't receive their worship. But this man says, well, he had to be a worshiper because God answered his prayer and healed me. Hebrews 1:6 says that the angels worship him. In Matthew 8:6, a leper came to him and said, if you will, you can make me whole. He worshiped him, came and worshiped him. Matthew 9:18, the ruler who had a daughter that was sick came to Jesus and worshiped him. Matthew 4:33, the disciples, when they were in the boat and he had saved their life, they worshiped him. Matthew 15:25, a Gentile woman had a daughter that needed healing, and she came and worshiped Jesus. And the healing did not belong to the Gentiles, but her worship moved Jesus, and Jesus healed her anyway. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Now, you know I was going to go there. We've got to go there. In John chapter 4, in John chapter 4, we'll start with verse 21. And you know this is where Jesus was at the well. The disciples had gone to get something to eat. And there was a Samaritan woman there. And the Jews and Samaritans didn't have anything to do with one another. And so the woman had a question about worship. And in the 21st verse, we'll start there rather than reading the whole chapter. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither worship in this mountain, nor yet at Jerusalem. Yet at Jerusalem, worship the Lord. If the day's coming when you don't have to worship here, and you don't even have to worship in Jerusalem. You see, here's the thing. You can worship God anywhere, anytime. Isn't that right? And in any position.
Yes, sir.
If you want to bow, that's good. If you want to lay on your face, sometimes I'll do that. That's good. That's fine. It's just an outward expression of the inward working of the heart. Under the old covenant, they couldn't worship God in spirit and in truth because their spirit was not like God's. So they could not worship him, but so they would try. They would try by dancing and running and falling down and bowing down. They used all these outward expressions. Now, we don't have to do that today because worship to us is a heart thing. But if we're moved to do that, like, for instance, we are moved to lift our hands. Mm-hmm. But it's not a means that we have to lift our hands to worship God. It's just a response to God when we worship. And there's times you may fall, you may lay on your face, you may bow down, different things like that. But it's not, you don't have to do that to worship under the new covenant. Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when neither in this mountain nor yet in Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship you know not what. We know that worship is for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. He said that the time is coming. See, the time is coming, and he himself is here already. So that's why he said the true worshipers. He was a true worshiper. He had a spirit like God. And so he was basically saying that in the next generation, in the next move, the next transition, you're not going to worship like you used to. You're going to worship in spirit and in truth. I used to not understand what he meant by truth. But see, under the old covenant was a shadow. The Bible says it's a shadow of things to come. Well, we're not under the shadow. The shadow has no substance. The shadow is not you. The shadow of Jesus is not Jesus. But God declared the end from the beginning. And so Jesus is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. So Jesus, we're not under, and we don't worship under the shadow. We worship in him, the one who made the shadow. Amen? All right. Notice this. He said, but the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit, not in soul, although the soul gets involved. Worship the Father in spirit. They couldn't do that under the old covenant. True worshipers now. Do you know you can go through the motions? You can go through the motions to try to impress somebody, but your heart's not in it. But the hour comes, there's many deceivers in the world. But word says that there are men out there lying in wait to deceive you. They are right now. And they got to look good. You're not going to be deceived by somebody coming around with a red cape on and with a, pitchfork. I think we would probably, most of us, would recognize that that's not God. But for instance, religion. And that's the main spirit we deal with in this part of the world is the spirit of religion. And the reason religion is so powerful is because it looks like God. It acts like God to some degree. Sounds like God to some degree. See? And that's what makes it so deceiving. But he goes on, he said, and the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Now, this is something that I want to end up with. For the Father seeketh. The Father seeketh. Everybody say seeketh. The Father seeketh such, what's he talking about? To worship him in spirit and truth. The Father seeketh such to worship him. The Father is seeking. He was seeking them because they couldn't worship him at this time in the spirit. He was seeking that time when they could, but he's still seeking today. The Father is seeking somebody to worship him in spirit and in truth. I want to be one of those that he finds. He's seeking someone to worship him in spirit and in truth. Why? Because God is a spirit. And they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. I was worshiping one time. Actually, I was spending an extended time of worship. And at the end of my time, and sometimes it's good to do this. I really believe it. I mean, you can set aside 5 minutes. I'm just going to worship. 10 minutes. I'm just going to worship. And you can as long as you just, you can set a time. And then you can battle with your mind, But I had set aside some time to worship him. And when I was finished with the worship, I had a vision. Some of you have heard it. Maybe there's people on the internet that haven't heard it. But when I finished worshiping and I had this vision, I saw, as it were, the Father sitting on the throne. Let's look at this as his throne. He's sitting there on his throne. And I am standing right here. And there's a great sea of people. I mean, just look, I don't know, thousands and thousands, maybe millions. But there were just people out there everywhere. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice. I love you. I worship you, Lord. I worship you, Jesus. And I'm standing there and I'm looking at me. I'm way back at the back of the crowd. And I'm worshiping, and there's just a great, great roar coming up from the people worshiping God. And I'm standing back there, and I'm thinking, look at all of these people worshiping, and here I am just, I love you, Father. I worship you, Father. And what happened is the Father, I watched him. And he did this. And when he did that, he did that for me. When he did that, he was hearing me way back at the back of the crowd. And with that great roar taking place, all the people worshiping him, he could still hear me. And he still enjoyed my worship. It still meant something to him. Just because you've got a great crowd doesn't mean a lot of things are called worship today. It's not necessarily worship. He is seeking such to worship him. See, you can, under the old covenant, they just worshiped him out of their head and might even become very emotional about it. And let me just say this, when you worship, it seems like to me there are people I just love. I'm so envious, really, of people that when they start worshiping, they start crying. Man, I wish I could cry. Very few times. There's sometimes. For instance, when I had that vision, I was in a hotel room and I just fell over it broke me big time. And I just fell over on the bed, weeping because of his presence and what he had just showed me. And there I was in that room by myself, worshiping God with millions of people all around the world worshiping him at the same time. How many know God can hear us all? Every one of us individually. Worship makes us an individual that God cares for and loves. Amen. So, worship him. He's seeking us to worship him. Now, I love to worship. You don't have to become emotional. Some people do. Some people cry. Some people even laugh. Some people do just fall on their face. Some people do get loud. You know, there's heaven. If you're afraid of noise, you don't want to go to heaven. Oh, yeah, there's noise out there, man. And, people. Angels are worshiping him. The saints are worshiping him. You better take your earplugs with you if you go. Amen. Amen. But I love corporate worship. Because when we come together, you have a supply of worship. You have a supply of worship. You have a supply of worship. And all of our worship comes together. And God loves that. He loves it. And that's why he comes. He comes when people worship him. I know one scripture says that God inhabits the praises of his people. Now, a lot of people, they separate worship, praise, and thanksgiving. But they all come under worship. Amen. And we worship the Father in spirit and in truth. I hope it stirs you up. I hope you decide to worship him all the way home. Amen. And I hope it helps you to understand how to fight that fight in your mind when you worship. Amen.